With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey. This is a bunch of stuff, deal.
What does that mean, a bunch of stuff?
Well, it means it's simply inaccurate.
It's Irish.
Exactly, it is. We Irish call it malarkey.
Thanks for the translation.
No,
Okay.
We Irish call it malarkey.
You know what this is? Yeah, and I reserve this word for those rare instances when it's truly deserved. This is malarkey.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
From the King Spring Studios here in Smyrna, Georgia, this is A Bunch of Malarkey. I'm your host, Charlie McMahon. Thank you so much for joining us once again on this, I guess you could say, St. Patrick's Day weekend, post-St. Patrick's Day weekend edition of the show. We are the home for all things malarkey and shenanigans. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope you had a great St. Patrick's Day. Whether you're Irish or not, folks, it's a party day for everybody. So we hope you had your fill of food and drink. Saturday night, we actually were in the city to meet some friends for dinner. And I'll tell you, that's the first time I ever saw Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, bustling the way it was on Saturday night with everybody post-parade, post-St. Patrick's Day parade, going to the bars. I mean, when we first moved here, we're used to New York City, where you go into New York City any time of day or night, and there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people walking around, lots of pedestrians, lots of car traffic. In Atlanta, there's not really a lot of pedestrian traffic. The first time we drove into Atlanta when we were scouting the city and looking to move here, we drove in on like a Friday afternoon at like 3 o'clock, and we were like, where are all the people? So Saturday night gave us that real city feeling again, seeing everybody walking around, having a good time out on St. Patrick's Day on Saturday night. So spring has sprung. The pollen is starting. I'm starting to get, I don't really have bad allergies, but since I moved to the south, they've gotten progressively worse each year. Again, worse in the fall for some reason. But I am starting to feel a little, and I take that daily allergy crap medicine pill and spray every day. But I can feel the pollen coming on. But spring has sprung. Things are starting to bloom. I know in other parts of the country, there's blizzards and bomb cyclones out west. I know our own Johnny B., who's co-hosted the show a few times, was headed out west to Colorado and had to turn around on I-70, I believe, at the Kansas-Colorado border. He was heading out to Colorado and New Mexico for a little excursion for a couple of weeks. So Johnny B., if you're listening, we hope you got to your next destination safely, and we will see you when you get back. So another week of Uber. I was a little under the weather at the beginning of the week. I went out and did some Uber on Monday. And then I just got like a stomach bug or something Monday night. I was a little out of it on Tuesday. So I only had about a dozen Uber trips this week. But a couple of funny ones. Again, we talk about nonsense items, folks. A woman ordered a bagel with cream cheese. I had to drive to like a Panera type restaurant to pick up a toasted bagel with cream cheese and then drive it a few miles. Like, it's out of hand, folks. And now here's one, folks. If you went to the doctor, okay, now picture you go to a doctor and they tell you have to wear a mask, whether it be because your immune system is compromised and it's for your own protection, or maybe you're contagious and you have to wear this mask. Now, if you're walking out and about in a big mall or in a big outdoor thing, it's none of anybody's business why you're wearing a mask, right? Maybe you're just allergic to pollen, something. But I think if you're wearing a surgical mask or any type of mask, sitting next to someone on a plane, getting in a closed car with someone, isn't it incumbent upon you to explain to the people around you that, hey, I'm not contagious, or don't worry, or whatever, this is for my protection? I got summoned to a doctor's office, literally blocks from my house. So I go and pick up this gentleman. And he's wearing a mask, like a mask. So I pull up. Now, riders are supposed to get in the back seat. I pull up. This guy decides he wants to sit in the front seat next to me. So rather than argue with the guy, I just let him get in. He was nice enough. I was nice back. Now, he's wearing a mask. Now, if I'm the guy wearing the mask getting into someone's car, the first thing I'm going to say to them is, don't worry, I'm wearing the mask because of this or that. And I give my whole medical history to the Uber driver. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to get personal. But I'm going to say, don't worry. I'm going to put the driver's mind at ease. This guy said nothing about the mask. And I ended up driving him over to Walgreens, I guess, for prescriptions or whatever. Very nice guy. Ended up tipping. But I don't know, folks. If the tables are turned and I'm the guy wearing the mask, again, if I'm walking in the mall, none of your fucking business why I'm wearing the mask. Or if I'm walking down the street, But if I'm right next to somebody in an airplane or in a car, I'm going to turn to them and say, hey, listen, just to put your mind at ease, this is why I'm wearing the mask. I don't know. That's just my theory with the mask, folks. I don't know. What do you think? If you're wearing a mask, you going to explain yourself if you're sitting directly next to someone on a plane? Or you just say, screw it. I don't know. Guy could have had Ebola. I have no idea. But, maybe that's why I got sick. I don't know. So this is what you're dealing with, folks, when you deal with the public in close quarters. And a friend of mine, who we went out to dinner with, she works in an office building, and she told me that DoorDash comes to her building on a regular basis to deliver a couple of Diet Cokes, 3 or 4 Diet Cokes a couple of times a week, iced, like drinks. And she told me they're right across the street from like a Sam's Club. Now, if you're working in that office, don't you just go to Sam's Club and get a case of Diet Cokes and put them in the refrigerator? You're summoning DoorDash to your office a few times a week. Those like $2 Cokes turn into like $10 Cokes by having the guy deliver. I don't get people. Again, I'm not going to turn down a ride to make money. I'm going to do what I have to do. But all these traffic and this carbon footprint we're putting out there just to get people little, they're not even necessities, little wants. Every little whim now that you just summon on your phone, you get whatever it's crazy, folks. It's crazy. So, as we've spoken about in the past, people get crazy over food. Last week we had the woman at Wendy's pulling a gun on the drive-thru. This week in St. Paul, Minnesota, folks, a woman is accused of pulling a gun on Domino's employees when they forgot to include chicken wings in her order. Holly Webb, 59 years old. Now, you should know better at 59, was charged with 1 felony count of violent threats. A Minnesota television station reported. Her bail is set at $10,000. According to police, the woman confronted employees at a St. Paul Domino's and said she was angry about the food delivered to her house. She demanded a refund and allegedly pulled out a handgun, but when an employee called 911, she left in a hurry in her vehicle. Police located the vehicle outside the suspect's home and took her into custody. The Domino's employee confirmed Webb's identity, a television station reported. Police said Webb admitted to displaying the handgun, but denied she pointed it at anyone. Now, again, why are people so hangry out there? Have a Snickers bar, folks. I've been in situations where I've driven all the way, not even delivery, where I've gone to a place, drove it all the way home and realized they forgot a French fry, it happens, folks. I'm not pulling a gun out on anybody. So this is like a weekly thing with these people in society, and we're going to get into this later as our main topic. I think it's a lot of these basic manners and basic things should have been taught at home with the parents. But I think the schools failed in preparing most people for the real world. Their expectation of what was going to happen when they got out of school and got into the regular world was skewed. We're going to get into all that later. So this is why we have all these mutants every week. Again, I think a lot of it falls on the parents. If you're raised properly, yes, a kid, if you're raised in a great household, 4 kids, 3 could turn out great, 1 could turn out to be a mutant. It happens. But I think the foundation starts at home, folks. And the expectation, manners, courtesy, all that stuff begins at home, and the school should be teaching it as well. But we're going to get into that later. But, and another rideshare related things, folks, listen to this. Now, you know I love Christmas music, but it's March, folks. But I'm not saying what this guy did was right. A musical motorist nearly had a blue Christmas last week. A passenger with no holiday spirit was arrested last week after allegedly choking an Uber driver who wouldn't stop singing Christmas carols in March. Western Pennsylvania cops arrested Clayton Lucas last Monday and charged him with trying to strangle the Uber driver of a minivan in which he was a passenger, according to a news affiliate in Pittsburgh. The driver reportedly told the cops that his 25-year-old passenger grabbed his throat while he was driving south on Route 28 and choked him to where he was barely conscious because he wouldn't stop singing Christmas songs. A state trooper who was waved down over a possible medical emergency at 9 a.m. last Monday near a highway off-ramp. The officer approached both men on the shoulder of the road after they'd exited the vehicle. Lucas reportedly wouldn't listen to the officer, who was forced to wrestle him to the ground. The victim allegedly showed signs of possible choking. Lucas was brought to the Allegheny County Jail. Now, I don't know what to take. you shouldn't be singing Christmas songs in March. I get it, but to choke the guy out, just say, "Excuse me, sir, could you please?" You ask politely. Again, where did the manners go? Where did common courtesy go, folks? It's like a common sense isn't there anymore. And you look to the news this week of that woman. Anybody hear about the woman who crossed the zoo barrier to take a selfie with a jaguar and got attacked by the jaguar? She went over the barricade. And the zoo did it right, folks. They said there's no way to stop people from crossing the barriers. There's signs, there's all kind of things, but people want to take selfies with wild animals. The woman who was, they didn't release her name. She's in her 30s, suffered a cut on her arm. She's expected to recover. The zoo did the right thing. Normally they put the animal down like they did with that gorilla a couple of years ago. And the zoo said, we're not doing anything to the animal. The animal didn't do anything wrong. These people need to stop taking these selfies and crossing these barriers. The woman apologized, went to the zoo after she was treated and apologized, but it was like a half-hearted apology. She said, quote, "I was in the wrong for leaning over the barrier, but I do think maybe the zoo should look into moving their fence back," end quote. That's like a half-hearted bullshit apology. Just admit you were wrong. You did the right thing by going there and apologizing. Then you had to throw in they should move their barrier. Maybe you should learn how to read, lady. Read the signs. Again, who let us down, folks? Did our parents let us down? Or these people? I shouldn't say us, because I know a lot of you listening are mutants. I had my mutant days, but who's at fault here, folks? Where's common sense anymore? And you're blaming the zoo. Put the barrier. But I'm glad that they didn't euthanize the animal like a lot of zoos do for incidents like this. So that'll springboard us right into, since we're talking about all these wacky people, right into our favorite segment.
Mutant of the Week.
Now, last week we had a pretty decisive victory, folks. In a 69% to 31% victory, the tortilla torching trespasser beat the bridal beach beater 69 to 31%. So the guy who broke into an apartment to make soup and burn tortillas on the stove beat the gentleman who got arrested and jailed the night of his wedding for beating someone up on the beach who was in his beach chair. So 69 to 31%, a pretty decisive victory. Thanks to all of you who took the time out to vote. If you're new to the show, which many of you were again, we had another record-breaking week. Where do you vote for the Mutant of the Week? You go to our Facebook page, A Bunch of Malarkey, like the page, and the poll goes up on Tuesdays, ends on Saturday, so you have 5 days to vote. And while you're there, give our Facebook page a review about the show, and let us know what you think, and definitely get caught up in the conversation that we have every week about the topic. So let's go to this week's mutant nominees. Our first mutant comes from California. Folks, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere, as the song goes. But for one woman, the right time for beer apparently occurred in a Target dressing room. Alicia Johnson, 21 years old, was arrested after she drank a 6-pack of beer in a Target dressing room in California last Saturday. According to Lathrop Police Services, Johnson entered Target around 3:30 p.m. and placed several items in a shopping cart and basket. Johnson then walked around the store, grabbed a 6-pack of Stella Artois beer, and headed towards the dressing room. For over an hour, police say, she made the dressing room her personal bar and drank the entire 6-pack of beer. I wonder if she, put some drinking music on her phone, made it like a real, jukebox type setting. After consuming the 6-pack, she left the store without paying for the more than $200 of items she carried out of the store with her, including the beer, authorities say. She was detained by Target's loss prevention team and later booked into the San Joaquin County Jail. Johnson faces shoplifting charges in addition to 3 other warrants for prior misdemeanors. Her outstanding warrants include charges for petty theft, battery on person, and resisting, obstructing, delaying an law enforcement officer or EMT, according to arrest records from the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office. Her bail stands at $60,000, and she's set to appear in court tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning. So we'll call her the dressing room drinker, Now, this is what I've talked about this a million times too. If you already have warrants out, folks, keep a low profile. Why are you going out and doing? They looking to get caught. These people. So this woman decided she was going to steal first, drink in the dressing room. Now, I worked in retail, folks. I could tell you there's a lot more than drinking that goes on in these fitting rooms. Stories I won't start to get into now because we'll get off topic. But the dressing rooms and these fitting rooms are used for a lot of things besides changing. We'll leave it there for today. So the dressing room drinker is our first mutant nominee. Our second mutant nominee comes from, I guess, Canada, because that's where this trip started. Two brothers decided to drive from Canada to Mexico without license plates, legal documentation, but did not get very far. Bailey and Damian Roy were arrested following a bizarre 6-hour standoff at the U.S.-Canadian border. They were released from custody after a terrorist hoax charge was dropped. Their ambitious plan included filling 21 jugs with gasoline and placing them inside the 1967 Buick Skylark that they purchased one day before their arrest, according to Crown Prosecutor Brian Munn. So this was their plan. Damian Roy and Bailey, 22 and 21, hoped to avoid gas stations as well as border agents, but immediately ran into trouble at a checkpoint in the province of New Brunswick as they tried to cross into Maine. They froze at the checkpoint, according to Munn, and would not speak with officers. They did not move, Munn said, according to CBC News. Agents backed off after seeing the jugs of gasoline in their vehicle. The crossing was shut down for 12 hours, according to CBC News. So they're saying now this wasn't a terrorist act. It was just two guys being stupid. So our mutant number 2, we get 2 for the price of 1. The cross-continent quacks, the 2 guys deciding to drive across North America with no documentation, no license plates, and 21 jugs of gasoline in their car. So, again, the voting goes up on Tuesday morning, and will end on Saturday. So I just wanted, before we get into the main topic, folks, I wanted to let you know that we have 2, I know you've been listening to me for the last 5 or 6 weeks going solo, but I want to let you know that unless something drastic changes, I will have a guest for the next 2 shows. 2 different ones, one next week and a different one the week after with 2 fun topics. So I just, as I've said before, putting together this show every week takes a lot of work, a lot of planning, and sometimes people's schedules don't sync, and it's hard sometimes to book guests, and especially if you're doing a topic that maybe someone's not comfortable with, and they say, I'll do it in a couple of weeks. So we have 2 confirmed guests, one next week and one the week after. So you get a little break from me solo, different perspective, different topics. So I'm sure you'll welcome a little bit of a different show. So just wanted to throw that in there. Now, what I mentioned earlier, you have all these people walking around without common sense. It's like they get out of school, whether they just go to high school, whether they go to college, whether even if they go to a graduate school, law school, medical school, they come out with not a lot of common sense and not a lot of experience in the real world. Because I think, like I said, a lot of the onus is on parents to teach their kids different things. But the schools, I think, in a lot of instances, fail us over the years. And that's not a knock to teachers, folks. They don't come up with the curriculum. They just carry out the curriculum, and they do the best they can. And I tip my hat to all the teachers out there who have to deal with what they deal with every day. I don't know how you do it, and there should be a lot more pay and a lot more recognition for you teachers. So it's not a knock on teachers. It's a knock on the system itself. Now, there have been a lot of songs over the years that talk about this, about going to school and not really learning what you learn out on the streets. I mean, Bruce Springsteen on the Born in the USA album, No Surrender, said, "We busted out of class, had to get away from those fools. We learned more from a 3-minute record, baby, than we ever learned in school." John Lennon said it in Working Class Hero. "They've tortured and scared you for 20-odd years. Now they expect you to pick a career. When you can't really function and you're so full of fear, a working class hero is something to be." Even the Beatles said it. "I used to get mad at my school. The teachers who taught me weren't cool. You're holding me down, turning me around, filling me up with your rules." So a lot of times school is just about rules and memorization, and you come out of schools and you're not really prepared for the real world. Pink Floyd talked about it. We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control, no dark sarcasm in the classroom. Teachers, leave them kids alone. They suck the creative juices out of kids. They tell everybody, your only path is high school, college, get a job, get married, have kids. That's your thing. The Stray Cats said it. Can't learn nothing in school. They don't teach you on the street. It's even the song Subdivisions by Rush. Growing up, it all seems so one-sided. Opinions are all provided. The future is pre-decided, detached and subdivided. Subdivisions in the high school halls, in the shopping malls, conform or be cast out. Subdivisions. It's a great Rush song. So all these songs talk about conforming in school, just going to school, the repetition, the brainwashing, I guess you could say even indoctrination in a lot of ways. And then these kids come out of school, and I'm one of them. You come out of school, and they prepare you for certain things, but there are a lot of things they should be teaching in school that they aren't. And I think the group Supertramp said it the best. If you don't have the album Breakfast in America, it came out in 1979, and there's a song on there called The Logical Song. And it starts out, it says, when I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful. It was a miracle. It was beautiful. It was magical. You know that childhood magic, folks? All the birds in the trees, they'd be singing so happily, joyfully, playfully watching me. But then they sent me away to teach me how to be sensible, logical, responsible, practical. And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable, clinical, intellectual, cynical. There are times when all the world's asleep, folks. The questions run too deep for such a simple man. Won't you please tell me what we've learned? I know it sounds absurd. Please tell me who I am. So you leave school, folks. You don't know who the hell you are. You haven't found yourself. All you've done is get pumped with information, memorization. And I look back on public schools. Now, I think about the useless things that I learned in school that didn't get me ready for the everyday life as an adult. Now, we all, I think learning a musical instrument, there's a very big link between teaching a kid an instrument and music and a good education, hand-eye coordination and everything. But playing the recorder, folks, I think they still do it. Remember those recorders? Now, is anybody else curious about the proportion of people who actually went on to be professional or serious recorder players? I know it's a springboard sometimes to a bigger instrument, a clarinet or a flute, like a gateway instrument. For a lot of people, we just played that thing. Hot cross buns. We drove our parents crazy. To me, it was just a big old waste of time. When have you gone to a big orchestra or a big symphony and seen any recorder players? I've never seen it, folks. So I think playing the recorder was a big waste of time and useless unless you had an idea that you were going to be in music for a career or it springboarded you to playing another instrument. But for the vast majority of us, playing that recorder was ridiculous. What about spending time learning an abacus? I know basic, it just, you move the beads and you learn how to count. But there was a lot of focus on the abacus in kindergarten, first, second grade. Waste of time, folks. I have never seen an abacus since. What about the I before E except after C rule? It's not even real. What about words like, protein, foreign, vein, weight? I don't need to go on, folks. So you learned I before E except after C, a foolish thing. Didn't do us any use in the real world. Now, who took home economics classes? I think, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a house where, I know you probably say, how is that fortunate? But both my parents worked. And we had to learn how to cook for ourselves and clean and do our laundry. So when we all, my sister, my brother, and I, when we finally moved out on our own, and we all moved out at relatively young ages, we were able to do everything for ourselves. So in that respect, I think my parents did a good job. But when you went to home economics class, now I already had a basic understanding of cooking. A lot of kids didn't because they didn't have, they either had their mom at home and they didn't have to really learn cooking and laundry and all that. But the only thing we ever learned in home economics class to cook were like baking things. Baking cookies. The hall smelled like snickerdoodles all the time. I don't think I've seen a snickerdoodle since 1983, but everything was focused on baking when it should have been preparing us for healthy cooking or healthy cooking for one, because eventually we move out on our own or we're in college and we're by ourselves and we need to, try to eat healthy and learn how to cook for one. Instead of teaching us how to bake snickerdoodles and shit like that, we should have been taught efficient, like meal planning and things of that nature. So they didn't prepare us very well. We weren't going to make snickerdoodles every week of our lives as adults and growing up. Remember when a teacher would say to you, you would say, I'm afraid to ask the question. And she would say, what, folks? Or he, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Folks, then you get into the adult life and realize, of course there is. You ever sit through a meeting at work? Your teachers were just trying to be nice, folks, and to save you some embarrassment. But there is such a thing as a stupid question. And for those who work in the corporate world, who sit through meetings and conference calls, you see it every day. So, again, they didn't prepare us, folks. What about that tongue-tasting map? Remember that? It would say that it was a theory that different parts of the tongue picked up different tastes, like sour and salty. It's actually the whole thing was a lie. It was never true. So that was nonsense that we learned in school. Another non-factual. Here's one that I never understood. Now, as you all knew, I grew up in the suburbs of New York City. Country music wasn't even popular. Of course, in like the 70s and 80s, you had crossover hits. Back then, the charts, like the music charts, you had Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton on the top 40 because it was played across America and it was popular. And so you heard songs like that, Ronnie Millsap, Eddie Rabbitt. A lot of people don't know, I Love a Rainy Night, Driving My Life Away. Eddie Rabbitt was a New York guy from the Bronx. But we weren't really exposed to even country music, except the top 40 country songs on the Casey Kasem countdown every week. But yet, in school, every year in gym class, physical education, we had to do a week or two of Western square dancing. I shit you not, folks. Every year, we were told, next week we start, and all the kids dreaded it. When you're in fourth grade, you don't want to touch another girl's hand, and a girl don't want to touch your hand. You want to be do-si-doing and curtsying and bowing. But we were told we had to ask a girl in our class, because back then, first through sixth grade, you were in one class all day, and it was pretty evenly divided, boys and girls. So you were told you had to ask a girl to be your square dancing partner. So you were under that stress all week to ask someone and, fear of rejection. But I guess that part taught you, prepared you for, when you were 21, you went to a bar and asked a girl to dance and she told you to get the fuck out of here. But I never understood the square dancing. What did we learn from the square dancing? 2 weeks every year for, 6 years, 7 years? So 14 weeks of my life of square dancing. And it was New York. We weren't it made no sense. I grew up in West Islip. There was Islip, East Islip, Central Islip, and West Islip. Maybe they got confused with the word West in front of Islip and thought we were a Western town or something. But I swear to God, folks, what were they expecting us to learn by square dancing? I just never understood it. So we spent a lot of our time square dancing. And we spent a lot of times on different types of triangles, folks. Equilateral triangles, obtuse, isosceles, scalene. How is that going to help me in life, folks? How is it going to help me? It's great for a classroom setting, but you don't go out in the real world and try to determine the type of triangle your pizza slice is. When you get your pizza, you don't shit. But in case you're wondering, folks, it's isosceles. Geometry is important, folks, in many things. Urban planning, I guess if you're an architect, a building, even fashion design. But we spent too much time on it, and it's too inconsequential out here in the real world. So I think that's another thing that we wasted a lot of time on. And also like protractors and compasses. Unless that's your line of work, when was the last time you used a protractor, folks? And a compass. The only thing I remember doing with that is opening it up, making it look like a gun and stabbing people with it and vice versa. So, or trying to make the perfect circle or whatever. But we've never used a protractor or compass since. Then you're taught prime numbers, folks. Now, the only prime you care about now is Amazon Prime and if your package is going to be delivered on time. A prime number, in case you're wondering or don't remember, is a natural number greater than 1 that has no positive divisors other than 1 and itself. A natural number greater than 1. You get the point, folks. To me, it's a cure against insomnia. You're laying there in bed, you can't sleep, so start thinking of numbers you can't divide. So I guess it comes in handy for when you can't sleep at night. Then you're told in school, Now, I kind of wish this applied to real life, that you got to raise your hand when you wanted to talk. You had to have permission by raising your hand. Now, everybody talks at the same time, or they're interrupting each other, or basically ignoring you because they're on their phone. So we've come a long way as far as communication's gone. Here's one, folks. Climbing ropes in gym. I have never, remember that I think it was part of the President's Council on Physical Fitness. It may not have been. It might have just been we had a week of gymnastics, a week of dodgeball. So basically you went from dodgeballing the girl in the face and leaving her bloody the week before. Then you square dancing with her. And then the following week you were climbing a rope with her. Now these ropes would go from the ground all the way to the roof of the gym. And I remember some kids used to climb that thing like a spider monkey all the way to the top, touch the roof, and come down. I never could get 2 feet off the ground. Now, I never understood what that was for. Unless you're an avid CrossFitter nowadays or a pole dancer, it really never came in handy. I've never been faced with a situation in my everyday life where I had to climb a rope 30 feet in the air and go over something or anything of that nature. So we spent way too much time on rope climbing back in the day. What about this one, folks? Now, I understand the general premise of why they did it. Did you ever have to care for an egg for a week? Literally, you would take an egg, you would color it, like the outside, make a face on it, name it, dress it up the way you wanted, and then you had to carry it around for a whole week. Now, if you had baseball practice after school, you couldn't just leave the egg in your locker. You had to have a babysitter for it. You had to treat it like it was your own kid. Now, I think they designed this to teach it what it was like, what a burden a kid would have been as a teenager, maybe to prevent teenage pregnancy or to see how much work went into caring for an egg. So you can only imagine what caring for a baby was going to be like. But I remember having to carry around an egg, and in case you're wondering, mine was named Yoko. Oh, no. It was named Yoko. And I think I went to the 6th day of 7, and I was riding on the school bus, and we hit a bump, and the egg broke. True story. I guess I didn't have it strapped in right. But this is what we had to care for an egg. So I think that was kind of a waste because caring for an egg is much. I guess it was a little introduction, but when you're in 4th grade, you're not thinking about getting someone pregnant or being pregnant. It was just too, I don't know. I never understood it, caring for an egg. Did you guys have to care for an egg? Let's hear your thoughts on that. How about frog dissection? You're dissecting a frog. It's soaking in formaldehyde now. You had textbooks back then. You get an idea. There's a diagram where the lungs are, where the kidneys are. Now with computers, was it necessary to have all these frogs and cut them open? It was disgusting, folks. It was like traumatic. And I know some classes did baby chicks. There was all other different animals. I didn't need to see that growing up. I didn't need to be in 7th grade cutting open a frog. It was just something. And when are you ever going to do that again? Like, who cares? We know what lungs are. We know what they look like. You can look at a book. You can look at a computer. We didn't need to do that. We spent way too much time. And I think my wife disagreed with me on this one. Different types of rocks. I liked earth science. I liked it better than biology. I liked it better than chemistry. But learning these different types of rocks, sedimentary, metamorphic, igneous. I've never picked up a rock on a beach in my yard and said, shit, this is a sedimentary rock. Holy shit. It's never, it's just something we learned. And then unless you're getting into that line of work, geology or whatever, it's useless. It's useless. They not again, all these things, folks, we wasted all this time on, and they're not preparing us for the real world when we got out of school. You remember when you made a battery using potatoes? You hooked up wires to a battery. I don't know. People can't even change a light bulb in their house or fix the heat when it breaks, but you sure remember how to make energy out of a potato. I've never been on the side of the road. I got AAA. So, the battery dies, I'm stranded, I call AAA. It never occurred to me, shit, I'm on the way home from the store. Let me see if I could hook up my battery cables to these potatoes I have in the back here and see if I could. It's a waste of time. Yeah, you get the general premise of why they taught it, that different things give off energy or whatever. I don't even know why, folks, I'll be honest with you. But wasted time on that. Totally. Now, anything memorizing was a waste of time. We had to memorize the entire periodic table of elements, memorize all the presidents in a row. Now, it's good to know about each president. We went over that a few weeks ago on President's Day, where I gave you little nuggets of information about some obscure presidents, and we obviously know the information on the more well-known presidents, but just to remember them all in a row when they served. All that memory shit, because you memorized it, you studied like crazy to memorize it, and as soon as the test was over, it was forgotten. So to me, it was a waste of time. Again, didn't prepare us for the real world. Now, a lot of people are saying cursive writing was a waste of time. At the time, it wasn't. I disagree with that. I think it was important, and I still think they should maybe teach it, even though we're in a computer age and texting. I don't know. It's a skill that maybe should still be taught. I think I mentioned this many weeks ago, the metric system. I can't tell you how many weeks we spent each year learning the metric system. I don't know if there was some rumor out there that we were converting to the European metric system. But come on, folks. Reagan was president in the 80s. You thought we have make America great again now. He was Mr. America, not anti-Europe, but looked down on Europeans. There's no way we were going to convert to the metric system in the 1980s. So I don't know why we were wasting our time. Even on the roads, folks, you see a lot of idiots on the roads. And my wife and I watch a lot of these YouTube videos with people's dash cams and all the crashes that happen all over the country on the roads. You'd be surprised. And it's always one idiot who causes this major pileup and major wreck and problem. Now, I took driver ed, and driver ed consisted of classroom 3 days a week, and you'd be out on. So we had a teacher in the classroom who taught, the lecture part of it, and then we had a driving teacher in the car who was different. And a lot of people had normal driving teachers in the car. We had this old Italian man named Pat. And there was too much emphasis anyway across the board on parallel parking. Unless you live in a city, folks, I think maybe in my entire life I've parallel parked a dozen times. Never have to parallel park. You pull in parking spots. They should be teaching kids how to merge onto highways, onto freeways, yielding at a four-way stop sign, merging, all that stuff. But we were so focused on parallel parking. But we had this old Italian man named Pat who, instead of teaching us, and I passed my road test on the first try. But I look back and I go, how the hell did I do it? Because the guy we had teaching us in the car was probably 75 years old Italian guy, who would make us run errands for him. We would just drive him around. He wanted a cannoli and coffee. We'd take him to the bakery. He had to go pay his electric bill. We'd take him to the lighting company. He wanted to go to pay his doctor bill. Or go into it was called HIP, which is a medical provider in New York. He would want us to take him there to a doctor's appointment. We would take the whole time. We were just running this guy around on errands, and we never learned anything. I can remember parallel parking like a couple of times with the guy, but we used to just drive this guy around and do all his errands. So again, I think driver education is very important. I'm not knocking driver education, but I think they should be focused on merging and four-way stop signs, who goes first. You get to a four-way stop sign all the time. It's just mass hysteria and confusion. I think the emphasis should be off parallel. I don't know if it still is or what the driver ed curriculum is now, but back then we spent half the class on parallel parking. So, and astronomy. A lot of people think astronomy was a waste of time. I happen to like astronomy, folks. I had telescopes. My mom bought me like a small telescope. Then we upgraded to a larger telescope. I didn't think it was a waste of time. After all, space is the next frontier or new front, whatever they call it. But after a while, I ended up using the telescope to spy on neighbors. I kind of got bored looking at the moon every night. But we actually had a planetarium in our high school. For real, folks. People used to come from all over, field trips to our school. I might have mentioned this before. And go to this planetarium, and it was really cool. And we had this really cool, he had like this radio voice, and we would go into the planetarium, and his name was Mr. Maynard, very nice guy. I think he passed away recently, but great guy. But I can always the only thing I remember learning at the planetarium, other than the basics, the solar system and stuff, he would get on there. He had a microphone like a one pin to his collar, and he would say, "Okay, let's begin, boys and girls. Tonight, if you look out..." Well, let me preface this by saying we sat on these chairs that were like chairs with big spring coils on the bottom, so you can rock back and forth if you had to look up at the planetarium and then rock back down. But you weren't allowed to rock in the chairs because I guess they made squeaking noise and it was distracting, and he was afraid the spring was going to break on the chair. "Boys and girls, tonight, if you go outside and look to the northwest, you will see..." "Stop rocking in the chairs, Orion." He would just go right back to... And that's the only thing I remember from that planetarium, is not to rock in the fucking chairs. So again, a lot of people say astronomy is a waste of time or was a waste of time. I don't think it was, but again, didn't prepare us for the real world. Now, what things do I wish they did teach me in school that some of it fall under parents' responsibility, but what do I wish they taught me? As a 40-something adult now, I look back and I go, shit, I could have used the help with this or been prepared with that. They should have told us that quicksand really wasn't going to be a big issue. Everywhere you looked, cartoons, movies, you felt like someday you were going to come across quicksand. Never happened. No, seriously, folks. How about how to fold a fitted sheet? I'm 40-something. I still can't fold a fitted sheet. I've tried every method. I've seen YouTube videos. Still can't fold a fitted sheet. How to do laundry, I mentioned earlier. We were fortunate enough to learn at home. Again, parents' responsibility, but that's something they should have taught you. You go off to college. You go off to living on your own. You should know how to do your laundry. How to tie a tie. How many times do you see these, human interest stories about a guy on the subway tying a young boy's tie because he has a job interview? That's shit you should have learned already. That's stuff you should have learned either from your mom or dad, and if you didn't have a dad growing up, I know a lot of cases that's the case, but they should have taught shit like that in school. How about how to spot an asshole? A lot of times you get involved with an asshole, whether you're a guy, whether you're a girl, and it takes you 3 years to realize they're an asshole, but they should teach you how to spot an asshole. How about alcoholic content in beverages? They should teach that before you go off to college, right? What proof means, something like that, because you're going to go out drinking when you get out of high school and into college if you're not already drinking in high school. So I think they should teach you proof on alcohol. How about how to bring up the awkward conversation when someone owes you money? That's something we're going to be faced with all the time in our life, and you just don't know how to broach the subject. They should teach you that in school. Practical self-defense, I think, should be taught in school, especially nowadays with all the crap going on out there. How about how to stop an overflowing toilet? We had shows on toilets. You flush your toilet at someone's house, and the shit starts to rise. That should be right at the top of the agenda, how to stop that toilet from overflowing and embarrassing yourself. Just stuff like that. But I think, on a serious note, folks, I think the biggest thing they should teach in school is money and management and budgeting, because if I had learned that in school, my 20s were a disaster when it came financially. I was always working steady and making a decent living, but I did not know how to manage money. I did not know how to budget, and I look back and I just wish for the first 15 years out on my own, I learned how to budget. And I grew up in a household where, very middle-class family. There wasn't a lot of money left over to budget and save and stuff like that. It was a paycheck-to-paycheck existence. But learning how to budget would have been so useful for me. Learning how to do my taxes, I eventually learned how to do them by myself. That's something they should teach in school, especially nowadays. How to manage your emotional well-being and mental health should be taught in health class in school, especially with people's swings of emotions nowadays and all the shootings and suicides and stuff. Something very important to be taught in schools. How about this, folks? Understanding credit cards, student loan debt, and debt in general. You're 22 years old. You're in college. You're out on your own. You got a credit card. I got the next round. Everybody, you're blowing that. You're running up that card like like you're a big shot at these bars and restaurants. You don't realize what you're doing to yourself long term, and it takes you years to dig out of debt and bad credit. And I think that should be taught in schools. How to negotiate. How many times you go on a job interview and they say, you got the job, and then it's time to negotiate the salary, and they offer you a shit salary, and you're too scared. You just go, okay, and you take the job. You got to learn how to negotiate. Just don't go to Trump University for that, folks. Time management. We can all learn time management skills. To this day, there are a lot of people who can't get to work on time, can't get deadlines in on time. Time management is very important in the real world when you're at a job and stuff like that. How about how to fix basic stuff around the house? Now, I know if you're a contractor or a repairman, you're going to be like, wait a minute, you're digging into my pocket here. But I think we should all have learned in school. And I think we had wood shop class and metal shop, but they didn't really teach us basic things. We learned to make a wood cheese board to cut cheese on, and a toolbox for our dad in metal shop. We didn't really learn the basics of how to fix something around the house when something breaks. Basic shit. How about relationship and conversational skills? Especially nowadays, they should be teaching that when it comes, because everything's through apps and texting. There should be relationship and conversational skills, especially like relationship. with young men, how to treat women, and respect and things like that. Like I said, even in addition to house, basic car repair and maintenance, how to change oil, how to change an air filter, just basic stuff that should be taught in school. How to find a job, folks. I mean, that's big. I mean, it's one thing, and it's evolved, folks. It used to be in the newspapers. Now we have the internet and job sites and LinkedIn and all this other stuff. But I think that is still a very big skill to teach someone how to market yourself, how to do a resume, a cover letter, all that kind of stuff should be taught in schools. How about home ownership, buying versus renting? I guess that falls under budgeting, but what's more efficient, figuring out to buy or rent, that's very important. I know, again, you're going to say, why should a 16-year-old learn this? Because it's life skills. You're eventually going to use that. You're not going to use the recorder, folks, playing the hot cross buns. But when you get out in the real world, these are things you need to know. And I know nowadays you probably laugh, but I think they should teach kids how to understand health care. You go out there, people come out in the real world, they don't know what premiums are, they don't know what deductibles are, they don't know what networks are. It's very complex, it's very confusing, and I wish I had learned some of these skills growing up. And I think a big thing in school, and especially now, like, we were always taught that there was one path in life, folks. You go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you retire, you drop dead. That was our path. Getting good grades, getting into a good school. But nobody really ever talked about vocational schools. Even today, people are ashamed if their kid wants to be an air conditioning repairman. There's money to be made there, folks. That's something that robot's not taking that job. A robot's not driving to someone's house and fixing their HVAC unit. There's good money to be made in these vocations. There's nothing to be ashamed of. If your kid wants to be a musician, let him try it out. Maybe he'll fail at it. Maybe he won't. Nowadays, you can be discovered in 2 seconds on if you're good on YouTube. I mean, to me, we should be teaching kids that there's more than one path in life. The standard path that you have to do this, you have to do that, and this is where your life is headed. Let them choose. Especially with the scandal going on in the news, where they tried to get these kids bribes and stuff and get these kids into these schools. Maybe the kid didn't even want to go there. Maybe the kid wanted a different path in his or her life, and now you're in jail. The kid's life's going to be fucked up. So it's like, let them decide what they want to do and where they want to go. Don't be a helicopter parent. What we also don't teach kids is that a good career involves more than just a high salary. People think, oh, I'm going to be this and that because I'm going to make 6 figures or 7 figures, and this is what I want to do. You're already assuming that college is the right path for everyone, which it isn't. And then we're teaching people that success and a good career is based on how much you're going to be making, not about if it personally fulfills you, if you feel like you're leaving a legacy or contributing to society, or personal freedom in the job, creative freedom in the job, stress levels, and being able to pursue other things outside of your career, like a family and different stuff where this job is not eating up all your time and your energy. So I think we have to teach people that a good career involves more than just a high salary. And that's something that we were never taught in school. We were taught you go to college, you come out, you make X amount of dollars. This was drilled into our heads. And what this whole topic is about, school doesn't prepare you for real life. It's regurgitating, memorization, regurgitating facts, memorizing stuff, doing your absolute best not to make a mistake on a test. And does that sound like anything that you go through on a daily basis at work, folks, or in your real life? So we're not really preparing these kids for what they are going to face when they get out of high school, college, or whatever. And we teach people that failing is something that should be avoided at all costs. Folks, sometimes failing at something is the best teacher of things in life, and we got to teach that in class. And I think this strive for perfection is what's making kids snap and go crazy, and we've got to teach that failing is okay, okay once in a while. I know I'm being positive on this show, folks. I'm usually a negative prick, but it got me thinking with everything crazy in the world out there that's going on. We're ingraining the next. I was ingrained this way. Every generation since. To think a certain way, that this is going to happen when you get out. We're not teaching real life skills to these people, and I think it's really having a negative effect on society, where these mutants are lashing out because they think their life was going to be a certain way. You're having all these problems in society with mass shootings, with suicide, with everything, because their expectation of what their life's going to be when they get out of school is so different from what they were taught. It's like night and day. So we got to start changing the dynamic in school. I still believe, folks, there's no substitute for hard work. In school experiences, when you're in school, you're looking to take the shortcut a lot of times. You're looking to find shortcuts around assignments that seem pretty pointless to you. It kind of sets up an expectation when you're in school that you could take shortcuts, but really, there's no substitute for hard work. And I know it's a cheesy saying, but I think that's something that really needs to be taught. And I think changing your attitude. Now, I know I'm a negative prick when I come on here for the show. I look for the worst in people a lot. I tell a lot of stories about crazy people I see out there. But our attitude and who we hang out with, it's more than just being an optimist or a pessimist. It's about changing your attitude and being around people that that inspire you, that bring you up, having a circle of friends that not necessarily think the same way you do as far as what your goals are or your political leanings or whatever, but people who uplift you and you do the same for them, inspiring people that inspire you and vice versa, and just having a good attitude towards whatever you do. Now, I know I wrote a book about all the assholes in the parking lot, but let me tell you something, folks, and I said it in the book and I mentioned it to you guys. It was a bullshit job. Even the bullshit job delivering food. No matter what I do, folks, I might make fun of it and joke around and find the humor in it, but I go to these jobs, or whatever job I've had, whether I was in a corporate setting, whether I worked in a warehouse, no matter what job I ever did, I always put everything I had into the job. I took a pride in it. Got there on time, put in an honest day's work, worked hard, and sometimes you get the results, sometimes you don't. But this is what you do. You have to take pride no matter what you do, and until someone's an asshole, then you have full reign to turn it around on them. Now, what other people don't realize, too, a lot of people nowadays, entrepreneurship is great, and the internet has opened up so many avenues for people. But a business that doesn't make money, folks, it's not a business, it's a hobby. And I guess that's how DJ started. I started DJing, and for the first, 6 months until I built up a following and a referral base, it was more of a hobby. It was not a money-making thing for me until it took about, I would say, 2 years till money started rolling in. So I'm not saying to give up on it, but don't call it a business if it's not making you any money. It's definitely more of a hobby. You got to get used to making fast decisions, folks. In school, you get to think things out, plan things out. You take your tests and you have to think on the spot. But again, a lot of that's memorization. But I think that getting used to making fast decisions should be taught in school, because you have to make fast decisions every day in your career, in your personal life, at home. And I don't think we teach that. Again, debt. It's usually bad, folks, except for a mortgage and stuff like that. We got to teach kids about debt. And I think we have to teach the whole society, especially at a younger age, but now, that financial security is more important than having the shiny new gadget. You don't need the $1,000 new iPhone that's out. It's okay to have an iPhone that's 2 generations ago for $600 and put the remaining money in the bank. You don't always have to keep up with the Joneses, and I see it in the neighborhoods, and I see it everywhere where everybody's trying to outspend and outdo each other, and basically their net worth is negative because they're in debt. They have no savings. Majority of Americans don't have savings, folks, and that's true, because they're trying to compete and show off and be flashy. And I'm not saying not to enjoy your life. Go on vacation. Treat yourself every once in a while. But I think in the long run, and it took me years to learn this, folks, that and I thank my wife for a lot of it with budgeting. And I really enjoy doing the monthly budget around here and seeing how much we could save every month. And it's a lot of fun. I'm a numbers guy, so it's a lot of fun. But I've learned that having the latest and greatest thing isn't the most important. And you start to learn this more as you turn 40, where having that money in the bank or having that financial security and trying to save as much every month becomes the most important thing. And I think we have to ingrain that in a younger generation, which we don't. So I'm on board with that. And I wasn't for a long time because I didn't know any better. What about doing things that make other people happy, but not yourself? And I think that's a big thing that leads people to stress and being upset. Maybe you're in a career because your parents pressured you to be in a different field, and you've taken a path that was chosen for you. I think there comes a point in life where you just, you want to be happy, and you have to ask yourself, am I happy doing what I'm doing, or am I doing this to make family, friends, whoever happy? And that's something that you, again, should be taught at a young age, but something you have to do a self-evaluation of when you get older. I think we also should teach, and it touches on relationships, but I said, we have to teach at a young age that relationships, not just marriages, but friendships, everything, require consistent effort. Folks, when the shit hits the fan, all you may have left are a few family members or friends, and who are you going to count on when you get sick or when the chips are down, and vice versa? Who are your friends going to count on? Hopefully it's going to be you. So I think but these relationships take a lot of effort and time and things like that, and I think that we don't teach that at a young age. Again, and that ties in, few things are more important than friends and family. We've all had family problems, folks, yours truly included, but I think after a while you just hit an age where it's like the pettiness, and you try to forget about the pettiness and move on, and you try to, again, it's things you have to be taught at a young age. And I unfortunately grew up in a family where there was always drama and strife, but that's another show, folks. Here's a good one, and I got this online, so I'm not going to take credit for it. Say no so that you can say yes to the right things. It's okay to say no, folks. It isn't always easy to say no, especially if you feel like you owe something to the person that's doing the asking. However, keep in mind that every yes you say when you don't mean it effectively constitutes a no to something you'd rather be doing. Learn to say no when it's appropriate in order to leave more time in your life for things that should get a yes. I mean, I read that online. I don't know who wrote it. I can't give a credit for it. That's really important, folks. Again, something we don't learn at a young age. And the last thing, and this is a little bonus for you folks, and this couldn't be truer because I'm constantly learning. I never stop learning. As a student, it's not cool to be excited about learning. You're kind of a nerd. But if you adopt that approach as an adult where you're excited about learning, it's exciting, folks. But if you find yourself as an adult with the same approach you had as a kid where learning's not cool, you're gonna find yourself left behind in a world of people who know how important it is to constantly be learning. Now look at me. I've always wanted to write a book. I talked about it for years. I didn't know the first thing about writing a book. Wrote a book last year. This podcast, I knew nothing about. I didn't even know my wife for years told me, you got to listen to podcasts. I go, what the hell's a podcast? I got the basic idea that it was a guy or a girl or a man or a woman or somebody talking about a different topic or theme, and you just sat there and listened. I was like, I don't know. Then I got to exploring podcasts, and I'm like, shit, this is something I want to do. So I learned how to do a podcast. I'm still learning how to do this, folks. I'm 31 episodes in. I'm still learning. Learning different jobs, learning different things. It's great. It's really great to keep learning. So I hope the show is more of an inspirational show this week than normal, rather than it being funny. I can't tell funny stories every week, so we mix it up a little bit. But I hope that you learned a little something, or it made you think. Now, what is it that you learned in school, folks, that you think was a waste of time, that you just never used in your everyday life? And tell me, maybe I missed something. What should they have taught you in school? Now, maybe you went to college, maybe you didn't. Maybe you went out in the workforce right away. Maybe you went to college and beyond, and then finally got out on your own, and now you're married with kids. What didn't they teach you in school that would have really come in handy for you, that you said, shit, this would have really helped me? We want to hear about it. We're going to put a post up, or you can talk about it in the show notes, as usual. But we want to know, what was a waste of time? Any of the stuff? Did you square dance, climb ropes, do stupid shit where the school should have been teaching you the next level, how to prepare yourself to be an adult and your life beyond school? And what do you wish they taught you? Now, real quickly, my favorite teacher of all time was a teacher most kids hated. I had a 6th grade teacher. Now, I grew up where kindergarten through 6 was elementary school. Middle school was 7 through 9, and then high school was 10 through 12. Even though 9th grade freshmen counted towards high school, we were in a different building. We were still in the middle school. And I remember in 6th grade, the teacher that nobody really liked. I had a bond with this teacher. She's my favorite teacher of all time. Her name was Ms. Turner. And she used to tell us all the time, and we had little private conversations a lot, where she said, my job is not just to teach you what's going on in this classroom, like the facts you're going to learn and the stories, the books we're going to read. It's to prepare you, because next year, your life's going to change drastically. You're not going to be in one classroom all day. You're going to be in 8 different classes. You're going to meet all different new people. It's going to be a big adjustment for you. And my job this year is to get you ready for the next level, next chapter of your life. Your life, this chapter is closing in your life. Elementary school's over. It's a whole new world out there. In 7th grade when you go to middle school, and I want to prepare you for it. And I never forgot that. And I think that's the model that not only teachers should model themselves after, but parents too. Your job, folks, isn't just to teach your kids what they're going to learn to pass a test. You got to teach them life skills. You got to teach them to be self-sufficient. You got to teach them what life's going to be like when they get out of school and they enter the real world. So that's what this show was all about. I hope you enjoyed it. We want to hear your input. Folks, we grew again, another 150 additional listeners. We're up well over 5,200, and we're on pace for a crazy record-breaking March, but we'll get into that next week. I will have a guest coming straight from New York. He'll be here for a week visit next week, and I will introduce who he is, where he's from, and what we're going to talk about on next week's show. I think you'll be excited for that. And then the week after, I have another special guest coming in, and we're going to talk about another fun topic. So I got 2 great guests coming up in the next 2 weeks. Thanks for hanging in there, folks, with me running solo the last few weeks. I know we've done, this is our 11th show of 2019 already, and I think I've only had a guest a couple of times. So you've sat with me 9 out of 11 solo, so thank you. And the show's continued to grow, so I appreciate that, folks. And again, we're going to try and do different things. I was inspired, yes, see, the word inspired, by our friends that we went out to dinner with on Saturday night, giving me some ideas and perspective about the show, and maybe reaching for the stars a little bit, as Casey Kasem used to say, when it comes to taking this show to the next level, now that we have a loyal base every week. So some new and exciting things coming your way, a couple of guests, and then we're going to try and do some even more exciting things coming up in the spring and the summer here on A Bunch of Malarkey. So sincerely thank you. And I know I say it a lot, and when people say thank you, it might not seem genuine, but it really comes from the bottom of the heart, because I enjoy doing this, and the fact that you're all tuning in every week really means a lot. So for those who are new to the show, where are we located? Where can you listen to us? Maybe you're just listening to us on the link from Facebook. You want to listen to us on your computer, or even your obviously your iPhone or your smartphone. We're on the iTunes platform, Apple Podcast app, Google Play app, Spotify app, iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app, Radio Public app, CastBox app, and we're on YouTube. Or just if you're kicking around the house and you have an Echo, just say, Alexa, play the podcast A Bunch of Malarkey, and she will play the most recent episode. If you listen to us on any of those apps, just hit the subscribe button. This way you don't have to search for the new episode. You'll be alerted when the new episode drops, which is usually Mondays lately, but could be a Tuesday, but we're trying to stick to Mondays. But that could change any given week depending on if I have a scheduling conflict with a host or with a co-host or a guest. But it's usually going to be Mondays now, unless I'll give you an alert if something changed. So, folks, we weren't really prepared for the real world. Hopefully the kids today, I don't have kids, hopefully they're being prepared for what's out there. And we know what's out there, folks. It's a shit show out there, and I say it every week. And we need to teach this new generation to what, folks? Beware. It's a shit show out there. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. This has been A Bunch of Malarkey. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Talk to you next week.